welcome. This is going to be the week 2 tutorial for CAD 2 or MET 162's lecture. So, to get started, we're going to load up the Blackboard, and if you haven't done so, I'd start there now. Then we're going to open the side panel, go to Course Content, and find week 2. Here we've got our presentations for the week that we're going to go over in person, and then we have, on our next page, the week 2 lecture. Then we have on the next page the week 2 part and blueprint checklist. You're going to want to download and open those, and the checklist is going to be a document that you make a copy of to your Google Sheet. So you'll have to log into Google like you did in metrology. Now, first things first, we're going to look at the blueprint and look at the model. So, first thing we notice is that this part is in metric. So we want to make sure we're in a millimeter template. Now, for the first week or two, we're going to be able to just copy the prints that I give you, just to get used to where the tools are. Another thing I'm going to note now is that these notes are not needed in your version of the drawing. You wouldn't actually put the volume on a real drawing, and the mass is actually included in the title block down here. I just include those to make it a little bit easier for you while you're learning. Now, looking at the part, we want to break down where would be a good spot for the origin on this. And based on what I see here, we've got this round oblong shape here and extrude out the back. I'm going to put my origin right here at the center of this feature. Then looking at the front view, I think I want my origin to be on the bottom of the part. I think that will give me the easiest time. So with that in mind, I'm going to move this to a different screen and load up SOLIDWORKS. So I'm in SOLIDWORKS. I'm going to start a new part. And again, you'll open up to see this screen. We need to go to Advanced and make sure we are grabbing the metric template here. Okay, I've got a new metric part started. Now, one thing you'll notice is a little different. I have a lot more tabs up here than you do. That's because I have all the add-ons activated on my computer. Another thing you may notice is different is I'm going to be working in the Features and Sketch tab pretty much exclusively, which you might not have. You may have the Modeling Tools tab or the Basic Modeling Tools tab. To get the Feature and Sketch tab, all you need to do is search for Simplified Interface in the Command option, and that will give you, if you check it off, your Features and Sketch tab back. So, with that taken care of, I'm going to actually start modeling. I'm going to start a sketch, and I want to draw this shape first, these two connected circles. So I'm actually going to draw on the top plane. I'm going to make the larger circle at my origin and a smaller one over to the right. Now, these two circles are horizontal to each other. We can see that based on the center line. So I'm actually going to use a center line and connect them horizontally. If you didn't draw them horizontal, you'll have to add a relation and make these two horizontal. Okay, with that set, I'm going to use the Smart Dimension tool, and I'm going to dimension my outer diameter of the large circle. That is 60. This one's actually dimensioned as a radius on the blueprint, but right now it's dimensioning as a diameter. If I want it listed as a diameter, I have to do a little math. A radius of 15 is a diameter of 30. So I'll type in 30 and hit OK. Lastly, the distance between these two circles is 115. Okay, that gets my starting shape. Now I need to connect these and make those tangent lines that go across. So I'm going to take the line tool. I'm going to click somewhere here on the circle. And you'll notice how at first, well, now it's actually just coming from that point. But if I retry that and I click and move to the right, you can see it's actually starting tangent. Now, the biggest mistake that people make here is just pinning it right to the top of the circle. But the tangent point is not actually at the top of the circle, it is beyond. I'm going to keep sliding, and you see right there, it's a little hard to see, but next to my cursor, I get the relation symbol for tangent. And if done right, I should end up with 2 tangents, although I didn't end up with one here. But I am tangent here. That's okay. I'm going to take the line, hold Control, select left circle, let go of Control, and make tangent. Again, holding Control is just a shortcut to use the Add Relation tool. All right, I'm going to draw another one on the bottom. So I'll start, go to the next part, and there it's a little bit clearer. You can see the yellow tangent symbol next to my mouse cursor. And that time it worked. I got tangent and coincident, and you can see that line came in fully defined. Okay, I've got, well, before I do that, let me actually trim this to one solid profile. So I'm going to go to Trim, Power Trim, and I'm just going to cut out these bits. Okay, I've got one solid profile. Now, there are 2 holes left through this part, so I'm going to draw those holes on each side. One on the left, one on the right. I'll hit Escape to exit the circle command, and back to Smart Dimension to dimension these holes. So this one has a diameter of 18. The one on the left has a diameter of 30. Okay. With the base shape drawn, it's time to extrude this up. So the base has a thickness of 15. So I'm going to extrude that for 15. And you notice my arrow is pointing up, extruding up out of the top plane. And I am doing that intentionally. I want my origin to stay on the bottom because that's where all my measurements come from. And we can talk more about that later if needed. Okay, there is the base. Now, I'm going to continue and I'm going to extrude the taller cylinder on this side. So I'm actually going to start my sketch for that on the bottom. And then I'm going to flip my view back around to the top. And I'm doing that because, again, if we look at the blueprint, that is 50 tall from the bottom. If I draw it from the bottom, I can extrude straight up for 50, and I can use the number right from my blueprint, which just makes life a little easier. Okay. I need to leave this hole in the middle, so I'm actually just going to select that hole and select the Convert tool, which will trace it into my current sketch. Then I'll draw a new circle. I'm intentionally going to leave it away from that edge. That way I can select the circle, hold Control, and select the edge, and make those co-radial. Co-radial means they share the same center and same radius, so they're the same size. And I actually have a fully defined sketch with no dimensions, just relations from the existing geometry. With that done, I can extrude it, and like I said, since I drew it from the bottom, I can extrude up right to 50. Perfect. Okay. I'm going to do the tab on the side, the left side next. So to do that, I'm going to start a sketch, and I'm going to start that sketch on the front plane. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting. I'm going to start, and I'm just going to roughly draw this shape out in space. Leave, come back, make a full arc, go over to the right, and attach that there. Now, the problem we have is this needs to overlap the part. We can't just pin it to the edge. If we do, it's going to leave some small gapping when we extrude it. But there's not really anything here to pin it to. The best thing we can actually pin it to would be the inside face of this extrude. To do that, I'm actually going to convert this edge and use it as a reference. So if I select this circular edge and press Convert, it turns it into a line, and that line is visible in this sketch. Now, I'm going to make this construction because I don't want it affecting my geometry. But what I'm going to do is take that point right there and this line down here and make them coincident. You'll see this is now fully defined. What that does is this will always fill in up to this cylinder, no matter how I change either of these diameters, because I've given it the maximum overlap without affecting the interior feature. I will go back to my front plane, view selector, there we go, front view. Okay, and now I can give it some dimensions. This actually pins right to the bottom. Then we can smart dimension from here. This is the center of my circle. to here. That is 60. And this is a radius of 15. Now, admittedly, since this does go on the bottom, I also could have pinned this point to the edge here, but that's not always the case. And if it's not the case, you can convert that circle to a line. But in this case, I could just take this point and pin it to that edge. So if I were to delete this and let that float again, you can see it's actually still defined because it is coincident to that vertex. If I drag it free, it won't let me, oh no, it did let me drag it. So there, same result. The point is this line is connected to this circle, so it will always fill in the gap. Okay, we'll leave a small circle in the middle here. And I just realized that this is actually 50, not 60. Always pay attention as you're going. And we get a diameter of 12. Okay, features, extrude. Now we drew this in the center and it's 28 wide. So we're gonna do this from mid-plane for 28 and hit OK. And there is our left side extrude. Now, this rib that goes in here would normally be created with the rib command. However, the rib command does not work when connecting to a feature like this. It doesn't work when you try to extrude up to a circular boss. So we're going to have to do it the long way, which is to basically sketch a triangle on the front plane. So I'm going to go to the front plane and start a sketch. Now, this will more or less just be a triangle. The problem we're going to run into is we're going to have the same issue we had before. And that's in order to get this to extrude and not leave any gaps, we need to draw it up to this circle. So you can see by rotating my view, I actually gain access to it and can pin it to the top. Then I will draw down and pin it back here. That didn't create my vertical line, so I will go back, quickly redraw my vertical line. There we go. And then you can actually hit space bar to get your view selector quickly and back to front. Okay, now I've got my triangle. This actually only needs one dimension, and that's a smart dimension from the center of this to there, which, as you can see, doesn't work in this view. In order to do that, we have to do the same trick. We're going to click the edge of the circle, convert it, which turns it into a construction line, and now we have a line representing the circle. If I dimension from the midpoint of that line to here, I'm dimensioning from the axes. So a couple clever things we have to do to get this to dimension nicely. But that puts it in the right space. What you should not do is dimension this to this edge right here, because this edge is not in line with the center of the hole. Okay, the triangle drawn, we can do our extrude, and that is again going to be from midplane, and this time it is for 12 millimeters. And that gives us our complete geometry. When you look up here, you can see this little bit of geometry where we have these little lines coming out. That is the geometry that the rib tool cannot create, and that's what would have given us a problem. Otherwise, the rib tool would have been a much easier tool to use. Okay, last thing we need to do for the model side is set our material. So we'll edit material. This is actually gray cast iron. Oh, gray is spelled with an A. There we go. Gray cast iron, apply. And then since we know we're making a drawing of this, we actually have to fill out some of the information that'll be in our title block in the model. That's going to be up here in File Properties. So in File Properties, you can see we've got Custom. This is all filled out. But we need to go over to Summary. And for Author, we're going to put your initials. So since I'm making this one, it'll be AJL. And you want to do this in all caps. And for title, we're going to put the title that we see on the blueprint, which is Swing Arm. Those should automatically fill in on your drawing from here. Okay. Last thing to do is check the mass properties and see if the model came out right. So I'll go to Evaluate, Mass Properties. I've got a mass of 1,467.75 grams. And according to my drawing, 1,467.75. So with that, we're going to call the model complete. All we need to do is save it, and then we can move on to the drawing, which will be in the next video. Now remember, for saving, you want to follow the naming convention. This is class 2, so it's going to be C02. It's a modeled part, so it's -01. It's part number 1, so -001. And then finally your initials. And that is the naming convention. Perfect. With that saved, we're all set to move on.